Sadia, all set? Hello, Jamala.
Yeah, I think Jamala is also there.
Hi. Yeah, sorry.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I hope
Hi,
you are-
everyone.
Hi. I hope everyone is listening to us.
Yeah,
Who
we
is-
can hear you loud and clear.
You are audible enough.
Thank you.
बस we are just waiting.
थोड़ा सा वॉइस मेरा जो है ना इको हो रहा है.
Attendees only.
Only we just want कि वो वकार साहब आ जाएं. We are going to start in 2 minutes, right? Vakar Sahab is not there because he's the first speaker. So just we'll wait 2 more minutes for him and then we'll start, Sadia.
Sure, Saira. Thank you.
Something gone wrong? Ji. Where is our 800 number? He's coming. He said I got disconnected, so I'm getting back. I told him to come to the ICAP office.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Can anybody hear me?
जी जी वालेकुम अस्सलाम.
But I can't hear them.
Oh,
Okay.
can you hear us?
Actually हमारे mics
नहीं, लैपटॉप तो वैसे मैं डेली बात करता हूँ, पता नहीं क्या प्रॉब्लम है. लेट मी
Naeem Saab, can you hear us now?
रिकनेक्ट करूँ. ओके.
Can you hear us now?
उससे क्या फर्क पड़ेगा यार.
तो उसमें भी वैसे होता है.
लेकिन मैं तो हर करता हूँ मीटिंग अटेंड, कभी प्रॉब्लम
वही मैं
नहीं.
कहती हूँ
ये तो ये डायरेक्ट इट्स कनेक्टिंग. ठीक है. व्हाट इज दिस? ये क्या था रेड?
तो माइक पे प्रॉब्लम.
शुरू करें और मुझे दे दें.
Ladies and gentlemen, respected guests, we are just about to begin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of the Allah, the most gracious and the most merciful. Dear fellow members, respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm the master of ceremony for today's event. My name is Sadia Shakur, and I am currently working at British Council as Regional Risk and Compliance Lead for South Asia. I'm also a member of CA Women's Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan. Respected guests, on behalf of CA Women's Committee, I welcome you all to this session on the new ways of working. Start of 2020 was not only the start of New Year, but it changed our lives and ways of doing things. Little did we know that the world will never be the same again, and there will be discussions around new normal and new ways of working. COVID-19 pandemic has affected each aspect of our life, especially the working models. It compelled organizations to adapt remote working and work from home models. These ways of working have caused some challenges, but also opened up new opportunities. In today's session, we have business leaders from various industries who will share their views about the new ways of working. We have a very interesting panel discussion, which will be moderated by my fellow member from CA Women's Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to give opportunity to our attendees to participate, we will be taking a poll. The poll questions will now be displayed on your screens. The poll will be live till 5 p.m. Once you have responded to the poll questions, they will disappear from your screen. Looking forward for your active participation in the poll. Ladies and gentlemen, and respected guests, our first speaker for today is Ms. Hina Usmani. She is the chairperson of CA Women's Committee and immediate past vice president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan. She is the first woman to be elected as a council member of the Institute. With 27 years of experience, she is the founder and managing partner of Usmani & Co., an all-women-led accounting practice in Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Hina Usmani. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Sadia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good evening, everyone. It gives me an immense pleasure to welcome all our audience who have joined us today in this webinar hosted by CA Women Committee of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan on a very relevant topic in these challenging times. I'm grateful to all of you for your participation and hopeful that you will gain some important takeaways from the exciting discussion and thought-provoking insights by our esteemed local and international panelists. 1 year on, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected practically everyone around the globe, both personally and professionally. There were acute distress situations everywhere, and we have witnessed many layoffs despite government interventions to prevent such losses. Many businesses continue to suffer unprojected losses. However, we saw that many sustained these pressures and not only managed to cope with this unprecedented situation successfully by swiftly shifting to the new ways of working, but were also able to inspire the younger generation towards entrepreneurship ventures. So what really are these new ways of working? The government at all levels, including the government of Pakistan, have reacted quickly by implementing measures that determined our ways of working in the COVID-19 crisis. On the health front, adopting policies like masks or lockdowns and hybrid working spaces. On the socio-economic front, providing massive fiscal support to protect businesses, households, and vulnerable populations. Lowering interest rates, rescheduling debt, support for employee compensation payments are some of the measures taken by Pakistan government that have defined the functioning of many organizations. In this pandemic, technology has played a pivotal role in transforming, integrating, and providing remote accessibility to almost all functions of businesses, may it be finance, marketing, human resource, or supply chain. This has even given rise to virtual auditing. The point I would like to make here is that the technology before this crisis was not even was not being used the way it has been utilized in pandemic. All digital tools were available and people were using them on need basis. In fact, in one instance, in an international conference that took place pre-COVID, I was unable to travel due to certain reasons and requested for virtual participation, which was not possible as no such mode was available in that event. Now, each one of us has experienced a world that can continue to move forward without physical interaction. Turns out it was only the mindset which required adjustment to accept virtual workspaces. The pandemic has given way for great opportunities to increase gender parity, and a lot of advocacies were made for enabling work environment. In the past, the concept of part-time working, flexible hours, and work from home facilities were associated mostly with female workforce to align their work-life balances and was perceived as an inefficient system. Now that we have seen these flexibilities as the new ways of working, I am hopeful that the professional world becomes more open and is able to support a more inclusive workspace model for everyone. Looking at the positive side of things, as we always should, I would like to say the COVID-19 pandemic has made the individuals and businesses more resilient, more accepting, more innovative, and more hardworking. We should also reflect on the factors involved in sustainability of these new ways of working. Employers and employees across all sectors are looking forward to see the increase in work from home due to its successful implementation during COVID, supporting more focused work, better work-life balance, and technology-assisted communication. However, on the other hand, many employers fear the shift to work from home would have a negative impact on long-term productivity. One can question whether it's unlikely that flexible working will be adopted with the same enthusiasm as work from home following the crisis. Similarly, will the employment levels have any impact on long-term sustainability of new ways of working? For example, low-wage staff are more likely to have been laid off than high-wage staff, including recruitment and retention. To understand these factors more, today we want to talk about the new ways of working and their impact on the organizations, the workforce, and how our diverse industry specialists as individuals and as businesses have been dealing with the new normal. Before we hear from them, I would like to appreciate the efforts, time, and dedication of entire team led by our senior member Khurshid Kotwal in bringing us all together to share our thoughts on this pertinent topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hina. Respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, now we move towards our next speaker, Mr. Waqar Masood, who is the chief guest for today's session. Dr. Waqar Masood is presently serving as Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Revenue. Earlier, he has served in leadership positions all through his professional career. After promotion as Secretary in 2002, he served in key ministries such as Economic Affairs, Finance, Petroleum, and Textile. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Waqar Masood. The topic for his speech is How the World of Working is Changing. Over to you, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm very sorry that there was a technical hitch and it has taken me a while to come online. I'm very pleased. In fact, Hina Usmani Sahiba, Khurshid Kotwal, Sadia Shakur, Banu Ishaq, Sarah Nasir, और जिनके भी मैं नाम नहीं ले सका, I'm really very grateful that you have invited me on a topic, frankly, that needs a great deal serious discussion. This is really the moment in which we need to evaluate how our life has transformed more than 1 year when this whole epidemic started. It was 25th of March when it happened. So we are past another year into this thing. And frankly, as is true of the nature, the things, the way Allah has made this world, uh, when there is destruction, there is constant renewal and building up. And we see that we perhaps would be leaving behind um, uh, a world that perhaps we got too familiar with, and it was time to move on. And one doesn't know, and let's hope that we are coming closer to each other, and this change would mean that we become more efficient, more connected, more understanding. But as is true of almost anything, this rapid increase in technology can work either way, and it could be a way of distancing, it could be a way of disconnecting ourselves, it could be also used for so many other things. But let's keep an eye on the positive sides, as Hina has also said. What I found fascinating about this thing is that we thought the business is only done when you work together or meet people or invite them into your offices. And this thing has, uh, in fact, in China, this happened at the time of SARS. It has visited, this thing has visited us only after Corona. Uh, and the work from home is the new way of life. It has been going on. In fact, I know a friend who works for Asian Development Bank, and he said they are saying that don't ask until at least 2022-23 of a reconsideration whether we'll come back and do business as usual. So I think rapid transformations are taking place, but for this change to be sustainable and for this change to be meaningful, uh, uh, I mean, so many things have to be changed. Our attitudes have to be changed. Our regulatory processes have to be changed. Uh, I mean, something closer to your hearts, all of you. I mean, you deal with company law, and every moment you are looking at it and seeing that whether companies are working in accordance with the law or not. And there are meetings, there are so many things. Uh, I've been glad to know that Securities and Exchange Commission has made amendments so that the AGMs can be held online or virtually. And I mean, I'm doing almost half of my meetings virtually. But government has to do a great deal. We do price monitoring. I do it all the time on virtual, but maybe there are many things. In fact, some cabinet members join virtually, and Prime Minister is not calling people from other cities, and they are available virtually. So all that thing is very good that the government is making room, and it will be slow. But even before this thing, the Supreme Court had started uh, remote proceedings, virtual proceedings, and Justice Asif Kosa was the one who led this process, and people could join from other countries. Uh, Also, what is unbelievable is the ease with which technology has enabled us to do all this thing. I have a small connection of Zoom, and we pay about $11 or so, and it is just unlimited. You can go on and on and on. Um, so this change, it is happening when all the stars have been put in the constellation, and a product is emerging, literally uh, a constellation of new work ethics are taking place. Well, let me move on and say that other than these things, as Hina has also said, frankly, I see no better opportunity for correcting some imbalances in our society, particularly related to gender issues, women participation. I mean, look, this is so ideal. The workplace has become somewhat very strange, and occasionally there are issues of uh, uh, women being harassed in workplaces. Another opportunity where you can really make, as you go forward in the new world that will emerge, I think women will benefit immensely from this thing. Let me also share with you that we in FBR are doing a great deal by way of, and this is something closer to Prime Minister's heart. He wants FBR as an organization that just does not have any connection, physical connection with taxpayers. He wants all processes to be automated. And look, you are aware we have done appeals. We are about to do audit, and look, you have forgotten when last time you submitted a challan in a bank. So IRS and WebOC both are, I mean, at the front end of automating our things. But audit will be a remarkable move, and technology is making this. Let me just conclude by saying a few things. Look, the future is, I mean, in my judgment, the work, the way we work has been transformed. It is changed forever. It would not, like I gave you example of ADV, and other people are thinking that, look, we don't need, like there may be storages that you need to maintain by the presence of some people. Well, even there, if technology comes, even those things will be moving fast. So the technology is so pervasive in terms of making it possible to automate all the functions and then do the work from home. And I think I take it really work from home as a blessing. I am not afraid, and I'm sure those, I mean, obviously, I'm at the last leg of my career, but those who are just stepping in, they should be excited. Uh, I mean, why do you really have to? If you, when you do your work and even audit, frankly, all the information should be available. All invoices, they were generated on computers, so it doesn't take long for you to get all the vouchers and examine them and prepare trial balances and financial statements. So these are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I'm excited, and I once again congratulate Khurshid, Hina, and her colleagues of thinking to hold this webinar. And I wish you the very best in the proceedings that will be forthcoming. Thank you, Khurshid.
Thank you, Dr. Vakar. As he said, the world has changed forever. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will talk about the importance of embracing new ways of working and how it is adopted in Pakistan. We have with us Mr. Amir Paracha as our keynote speaker. He is the CEO of Unilever Pakistan. After doing his master's in business administration, he started his career at Royal Dutch Shell Company in 1996. He joined Unilever in 2000 and since then worked on various senior positions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Amir Paracha. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where in the world you are attending this from now. And I thought, what a wonderful virtual world that brings together like minds without the impact of borders or barriers. If there's a silver lining to COVID, it is perhaps this attitude shift which has enabled us to connect and perform like this. Now see a dynamic shift in our human behaviors across a vast spectrum, and this is the new normal. In 2019 ago, if anyone had said that humanity would go through this unique collective experience, we would have laughed it off or included it in the polite of upcoming sci-fi thriller. Last year, when Unilever Pakistan went to a global work from home model for our desk-based employees, we did so with a lot of issues. We happen to be the first company who have done it. And we did it with the belief that our systems had the preparedness in place to manage this transition. While some organizations were in the same place, others are adapting. And adapting is that what I think is what normal is about. Now, while some companies had more progressive views on agile and flexible workings, others used to look at the model with an eye of distrust and were forced into a reality where virtual is the only possible mode of operation, hasn't showed an attitude shift. There's now an honest belief that working from anywhere is effective as long as the job gets done. Those that had been deeply opposed to virtual working were thrown off the track by the pandemic and had a harder time shifting gears, especially when the pandemic stretched beyond the expected few months. There are, of course, different sides to the picture. Lately, there's been a lot of debate going around future ways of working. Multiple articles are being published by organizational psychologists in business magazines like HBR, McKinsey, Fortune, that is the era of brick and mortar is over and is everything's going to be virtual? My view, jury is still out. However, I would like to share my personal experience after having lived conventional 5-day work week from 9 to 5 for a good 20 years, plus work from home for good 6 months and now hybrid. In the last 8 months that I was confined to the desk of my study and the one dimension of my screen to see any colleague, what I missed most acutely was the vibe of the workplace, which brings alive the energy, the motivation in me to create, collaborate, innovate. Did not miss the great internet, techie meeting rooms, smooth desk. I missed the smiles. Yeah, I missed the cheer around me. I missed the laughter around me. The exchange with our reception staff on my way in. I missed the corner conversations I have with a colleague. I ran into the stairs. I missed the buzz of the cafe, even if it was the same menu for the third time in the week. And I missed being able to read the room and feel palpable excitement in meetings when we all could sense the solution building in a session. Now, the biggest learning of pandemic is the world will feel the impact of COVID-19 for years. And while the knee jerk is a complete shift towards a virtual world, the true answer lies in creating a balance between the world we come from and the world we inherit from 2020 and keep close to our heart the beauty of a pre-COVID workplace. The workplace of the future is a hybrid workplace where flexibility is a norm and culture is a source of social capital. We can perhaps never return to a 5-day work week. And there is a natural realization from the previous year that brick and mortar alone is not the world will work. And people should be trusted with the flexibility and a self-accountability to deliver and work from anywhere and not just home. The sustainability of the workplace of today is also from embracing remote working, where it comes to required and making sure that it was implemented at scale. This also allowed companies to think about alternatively innovating their work models and employees' experiences to prioritizing quality of work over governing the aspects in the location of employees. While some companies were ahead of the curve, when it came to agile working, for many, it was trial by fire. And to our credit, beyond the hiccups of tech and behavior in the initial days, we recovered quickly and thrived. The conventionality of the workplace also declined over time as people found the irrelevance of the 9 to 5 desk-based working, rising in a fast-moving, fail fast, learn fast world that changed by the minute. These are all valuable learnings which open up the economy to more enterprising opportunities, especially those whose hindrances to creating and building businesses was the lack of ability of investing in and maintaining office spaces. This was an easy transition for knowledge economy workers whose entire base was built on the people proposition. When we mobilized agility in our business to stop or reduce the systematic barriers that prevent agility in business decisions, execution and ways of working, because in COVID, when we shifted to an entirely digital and agile style of operations, even with our familiarity with such ways of operating as a global organization, which we have been practicing for the last 1 decade, we realized how processes can be further simplified for greater efficiency, flexibility, and performance, both from a people and a business lens. And it is imperative for the best of our lens. It's imperative for the leader to kick in at this time of need, and for people to take an open-minded approach to flexible work options that may look vastly different from the 9 to 5 or shifts that we have been used to following. Engagement of employees and tech enablement are the two different differentiators during this time for the companies looking to sustain momentum. Now, the experience also allowed flexibility as a benefit into the employee experience. And the people were able to dial up well-being, balance life better, and embrace a modern work-life existence. During this time period, people have also had to manage the increased responsibility of their personal lives, especially in an environment where many of us are making do without house help and are separated from families. Women were both beneficiaries and effectees during this time, depending on how you look at it. On the one side, there was so much more to manage, from online education to house chores and to much around it. They also had more flexibility in the hours they managed their routine. So we have heard different views and got different learnings. This has called for a greater level of understanding from employers to accommodate the people. This flexibility goes in hand with the amped up focus on helping people take better care of not only their physical, but also mental well-being. Having said all this, it is at the same time important to revisit why the office existed in the first place. In a market-based economy, the savings of foregoing offices would have been achieved long ago if the commercials made sense. And perhaps this realization is setting in. But as we revisit the original need of the office, it is also important to imagine its future. Soon enough, people will begin to detect the first signs of virtual working fatigue, walls for days and Zoom meetings that race clocks. Even to the most introverted of the introverts will become tiresome. The office is no longer a space to carry out routine works, most of which are fast becoming automated. It's a space that curates culture and keeps alive all that make us human. It is a space where those human moments that allow us to feel passion for our work, find meaning in our jobs tangibly, drive friendships, and create things that can only be created by people coming together, thinking an open, collaborative space, catching each other by surprise, keeping those unplanned, unstructured, unsolicited interactions alive in the lives we lead. I want everyone in this room to think of that one moment where you, without any intention of planning, rehearsing, just happened to walk past someone and got into a discussion that transformed into something powerful. I'm sure everyone will have an example, and I want you to think about the fun of lunch breaks and coffee sessions with the colleagues. I want you to recall a casual chit chat and meet and greet that you would have with hundreds in office just walking to the task of scheduling interactive connects. And I think so, that's what the life is all about. Yeah? And that's where, now, when you had a query answered by simply a chair turn and a question asked instead of series of emails and WhatsApps, I want you to think of the moment where your meeting changed drastically just because you could see and sense the body language, mood, and feel of the audience in a meeting room. And it was making or break for you. This is all important to how you feel about your job, how you perform, how you commit to workplaces, and the biggest differentiator of why you choose a company, the culture. At Unilever, this is now the guiding blueprint. We have all left a place, joined a place, or chosen to stay at a place because of culture. Imagine if this were allowed to disintegrate. A hybrid workplace allows the balance of the new world to meet the benefits of the old. It allows us to be flexible without being disconnected and agile without being captive. Shape this as the present so your future is shaped at the same time. The workplace of tomorrow will feature the office as a social anchor, the people as curator of culture, and the experience as a summation of human moments and personal choice and a flexibility. A place with the luxury of privacy and a focus when required, and the freedom of movement, energy, communication, and learning from being around people when vital is a culture space. This is a workplace of tomorrow. In the end, I would say a four-wall room without a human connection. Inside is a solitary confinement. A focusless arena with just noise, people, and disruption all around you is chaos. I wish you safety, health, great internet connections, and a meaningful human moments always. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amir. You rightfully highlighted the social aspect which we missed during work from home. Those of you who has just joined, poll questions are displayed on your screens till 5 p.m. Looking forward for your active participation. As said by Mr. Amir in his speech, sustainability of business is to embrace work from home or anywhere as long as the work is done. Our panel discussion will take forward this thought. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic for panel discussion is the winner will be those companies who thrive in the new ways of working and not just working remotely. Our first panelist is Camila Kore, having a career spanning 20 plus years in the entire spectrum of finance and accounting in diverse industries, holding senior positions. Camila, at present, working in the capacity of General Manager, Operations at WNS Global Services Private Limited. Our next panelist is Mr. Naeem Akhtar Sheikh. He is the senior partner in UHY Hassan Naeem & Co. Chartered Accountants and a current member of IFAC Professional Accountancy Organization Development and Advisory Group. From 2014 till 2015, Mr. Sheikh was president of ICAP and in 2015 was the president of South Asian Federation of Accountant. Ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist is Ms. Bano Ishtiaq. She is the partner at KPMG UK. Bano has over 18 years of international professional experience. She has worked internationally in Europe, USA, Middle East, and Pakistan. Our last but not the least panelist, Mr. Majid Aziz. He is the Chief Operating Officer at Standard Chartered Bank. He's a seasoned banker with diverse work experience, strong sales and product knowledge, with the entire experience of setting up 2 greenfield projects and starting a dormant commercial banking division. The panel discussion will be moderated by Ms. Saira Nasir. She is a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants of Pakistan, an independent director and consultant at Transformation Professional Private Limited. She is also a member of CA Women's Committee. Now, I will hand over the proceedings of session to Ms. Saira. Over to you, Saira.
Assalamu alaikum. A very warm welcome to all the panelists. There is no denying that the world has changed drastically. Organizations are rapidly embarking on a journey to digitalize core processes. The impact of the trend is yet to be fully seen because the investment is ongoing. But many forces we talked about before this pandemic, like automation of work, the need to reskill, have been massively accelerated. Let me just put a word that whatever views are being expressed in this panel discussion are that of the panelists themselves and do not reflect a stance of their respective organizations. My first question would be to Bano Sheikh. Mano, you are presently working, the working environment is pretty fluid. As an audit partner, you must have faced a lot of challenges, but somehow managed to encounter all those, and you successfully finalized a lot of audits, which was, of course, a new thing for you all in this troubled times. Many new techniques and procedures must have evolved. What do you think are the major trends that you see growing over the next few years for adopting new ways of working? And have any of these paved ways to bring the women professionals back in the field who were either on a career break or had left due to family commitments? Jivan.
Thanks, Saira. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. And thank you for having me in this event. So firstly, I must say, wonderful to be part of this thing, this group of people talking to you all. And one thing I must say, that if I reflect on what this pandemic has given me, it's given me the power of gift, which meant that I could be part of this event while I've just finished an audit committee meeting somewhere and joined you virtually to be part of it. So another thing that I'd like to say here is that the pandemic, working through using of technology, is basically what we have done is we haven't changed what we are doing, but we have changed how we are doing all of this. So there are some pros and there's obviously some cons that we have to work through. So in relation to your question, what are the new trends and what does the pandemic and the future of the office would look like, and how, and does it impact the females in the profession? Couple of things that I'd like to say. Obviously, the pandemic has taught us a lot of valuable lessons, and obviously these lessons are big and they're still being analyzed, they're still being understood. But one thing that has happened is it has fast-tracked everywhere, in clients, at professional services, everywhere, the use of technology. So large-scale projects were kind of implemented in a very short span of time. Those which would have taken 6 months would fast track into a 30 days deployment. So like WebEx, Teams, Zooms were enabled in that way. Now that if I look at what had happened is obviously we had to make sure people got comfortable with the idea of working remotely. And now in the UK, I have completed more than a year working from home. And what I see in the market is this hybrid working model is here to stay. It's not going away. In the UK, People Survey has suggested that they want the flexibility to work from home or also being in the office from time to time. And most institutions are highly unlikely to go to full capacity back in office anytime soon. So yes, 2021, 2022 still seems that there's work to be done and people will be working mostly or majority part of this year from home, especially in the UK. But I guess this is also to do with the government requirements and making sure that you meet the regulation. But the biggest thing that I think pandemic has done is shifted the mindset of leadership. So before, the leadership had that, that unwillingness that people work from home most of the time, rather they wanted people in a capacity be here. But now that the leadership has experience, has evidence that, things can work the same way from home as people are working in the office, they have come to the, acceptability that this is potentially the future. For myself, if I tell you this, Saira, is that this year I've not just concluded many audits. I have gone through an audit tender through a virtually, and I've also onboarded a new client virtually. So all of that meant that globally, all the firms were together in a room presenting to all of you, saying, I'm from New York, I'm from Netherlands, I'm from London. So it made it really real, and it was possible to do that. Otherwise, what would have been the thing? You would have been on a flight trying to meet all these major locations. So what it does is it's given you a lot of benefits from doing that. The one thing that I have also learned is that the ability to work through the use of technology has also taken the unconscious biasism where, if you have a disabled person in the team who could probably travel, who could do what they wanted to do, that became easier because they don't have to do all of that. So I think there's a real benefit for those people. For professional services, especially for audit and accounting, the key priority has been the introduction of automation. So we have introduced drones in our stock take this year. We had drones which went and did the stock take for us. Data was being analyzed by people sitting in their home and see what anomalies are being thrown out. We had automation in our funds audit, investment trusts, and all of these investment funds. We could fast track our audit timetable. through the use of automation. So we could, within 48 hours, data would be pulled in from a server, would be churned into our technology software, and we had queries which we had wanted to send back to the management. So our lead time of an audit, which was 90 days, was reduced to 48 days. So that means that, you know, people were working on a much faster timetable, and that was enabled through the use of technology. At the moment, in all audits, data analytics, use of robotics is helping the teams to do continuous audits. So we've been able to do quarterly reporting, half year, year end. So everything is becoming very timely, very organized, and I thought very consistent through delivery as well. And the other thing that I would say is, obviously, I see that use of technology, use of data, being more analytic will also shift what kind of educational background or basic education would be required. So before, we would obviously have the need for chartered accountants still there, but we do believe that the dynamics of the workforce will be more IT specific as well. So we'll have some IT scientists, data analysts being part of your audit team. So that's going to be an interesting challenge for all of us. Now, in terms of what do I see, the world of the office environment is likely to change to be a more collaborative incubator kind of a set scene. So you won't probably have a lot of, you know, normal desking. It will move towards hot desking, and that's how it would be. But we will, inshallah, I hope that we all get to see the sight of offices again. I think the automation and the wider adoption of working from home being the new normal will definitely play a very big part for women coming back to their careers after a sabbatical or a maternity break. And during the pandemic, while, you know, most of the studies have shown that homeschooling, majority of home care predominantly meant that the responsibility of women at home was again at a very high level. Automation, introduction of technology, flexible working meant most of the women could continue doing their job as they were meant to do, right? Otherwise, if we didn't have all of this, most of these women would have to leave the workforce and then re-enter. And that would have been it still seems to be the heightened risk that we face of pandemic. Nearly a Harvard study shows that 2.2 million women has left the workforce in the US alone. So to bring them back into the workforce is going to be a bigger challenge. And again, one thing, Saira, I must say, people have to realize that women in workforce is a must. And it cannot be looked with, you know, women, diversity is a must. People now ask you, audit clients ask you, what is the diversity dynamics of your team? So it's a must to have them. But we have to make sure we do not just give them the technology, we enable them through role modeling. We give, we educate the hiring managers, we remove the pandemic gap year biases, and also give them the technology tool education and upskilling so that women do remain part of the workforce. And that is a must for all of us individually and collectively as well. So I think that's what I would say on the question you just asked me.
I fully endorse your views regarding the women, getting women back into the women force, and having women in the workforce is very, very important. It's a pertinent thing that we should look into. As you said, you have a lot of automation support in your part of the world. Things are different, but in Pakistan, the biggest problem faced in working from home was not only lack of available facilities, but also that our workforce was not digitally fluent. Did your offices have the financial means to set up and sustain a home office, or were you helped doing this? Because you see, everybody could not afford all these things. So did your offices help people set up home offices?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid and a very relevant question to ask. So in the UK, obviously, because the government requirement was to work from home, every organization or most organization had a plan in place of how to support the teams and people individually to work from home. So we were all given our office gears like monitors, work desks, we were all given 2 monitors to sit with in an audit team. All those facilities they had in the office were then sent back to their relevant residential areas, and that was with the intention that people who had different kind of health issues as well, they were even given standing desks. So it was the responsibility of the employer to make sure that the employees remained well and looked after and supported so that the automation and the work could continue as business as usual. So that's what we all did. And I guess that may be different from Pakistan, but these are considerations that most and everybody did take. Because for me, Saira, this is an investment. It's not a cost. It is an investment. You don't want to lose the right people. Yeah. So that's what it came to. So we all had that support throughout and throughout. And I guess from an digital point of view, I think even it's not just my organization or the ways of working of a professional services. Doctors are basically doing voice recording of all the discussions, and then that is actually electronically converted into written notes and put on their data. So it's not just what this profession which is seeing change. It is every profession which is going through change, which is amazing, right? That gives you the opportunity to do different tasks differently. The other thing I would again then say is in professional services, majority of the staff is made of millennials who are tech savvy. I have to actually go to a student of mine or a team member who's junior. Tell me, how do you do this? How do I do this? How do I view this in a landscape? And they're telling me more things to do. And that's the beauty of it, right? Yeah. That while I'm a leader, I'm also learning as much as they are. And they're teaching me how to use that. So even for today, one of my team members said to me, the best thing you could do is open the spotlight, and that will give them a better view because you're sitting in a dark corner. I said, oh my God, that's the right thing to just be told right before I go into an audit committee meeting. So I guess all in all, there's a lot of positive from the pandemic. I totally respect that people have lost family, people are unwell, but I think this pandemic has left us with a good gift, or inshallah, Allah miya hum sabko, we all get to meet each other face to face. I would love to do that. But Saira, remember one thing, I wouldn't have been able to connect with you because you would have thought about it. That let's invite her from the UK and pay. So it's easier to do that now. So I guess I would leave it.
It has been small, right? That's good. Thank you, Bano. Thank you. Naeem Saab, continue on the same things. You are a partner of one of the leading SMPs. Conducting audit and other professional works during pandemic posed a challenge in itself, and for SMPs to handle the same was even difficult. We would like you to share your experience in this regard, and what role did regulators play to facilitate the SMPs, and how the increased work was managed?
Thank you, Saira, for the question. I'm really thankful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be part of this webinar. Well, Bano has given us a total different perspective, and I think the perspective from Pakistan and that too from the SMP is going to be slightly different. Nobody was prepared for this pandemic, basically. And when we opened offices, the first challenge with us was the safety and security of our staff. The first thing we did was that we reduced the strength of our staff to 25% so that every person can come on the fourth day. And we tried to communicate more through the digital platforms that were available to us in shapes of Skype and WhatsApp meetings and things like that. But you see, audit posed a different challenge to us. Audit in Pakistan had two segments to it. One is that where you need to work on the customer books and accounts and records, But the problem here is that ecosystem was not that facilitating to do that remotely, basically. So that part, unfortunately, we had to send our teams to the clients. And even if the clients, a few of our clients were on cloud, they were very reluctant to allow us to access their systems remotely due to cybersecurity issues. And very recently, to share with the crowd, one of our clients received a mail from an Indian hacker who said that you pay us some Bitcoins, otherwise I'm going to hack your data, and didn't pay heed to it. And eventually 3 days later, the data was hacked and they were without the data and they had to pay the Bitcoin. So there are issues, with the audit, and we had to physically do the stock takes. We don't have any drones here to do it, like the Bano said, but that's a very good idea. But let's hope we have the investment and the technology to do that. So, but the rest of the part, which is to be done internally, that of course we did while working from homes remotely through using the digital platform, all reviews, all the discussions and all the debates that took place remotely, and we were able to do that. But the challenging part was the client records and that verification process. Then moving on to the second part of your question, the role of regulator. Let me tell you the biggest problem that we faced as SMPs. Most of the firm had huge cash flow crunch, basically. It may not be there for the big four, but cash flow crunch because offices were closed for 2 days, 2 months. And when we opened up, even then the pipeline was totally dry, basically. So even the firms have force majeure, like they could not pay the salaries to their staff. But I really appreciate the role of, let me talk first about the State Bank of Pakistan, who really came up with very good schemes to facilitate the entire business and trade and industry in Pakistan. And the people were given the remissions, the relief, and the leverages to borrow more, to pay off their salaries, and especially the Institute of Chartered Accountant, which signed an agreement with one of the local banks, which allowed us to borrow money on our receivables, which is very unique. Normally banks will not do it. And to tell you, we also as a firm benefited from that. So regulators like Waqar Masood Saab talked about SECP. They did facilitate the virtual meeting of the BODs, and the AGMs. But unfortunately, I think they should have been more bold and allowed the extension in time of closing the financial statement, which was 120 days, and it became very difficult for everybody to actually do that. Now, the new normal, the last point was the new normal, like everybody echoed. The new normal is, I say, I understand that COVID was very disastrous for the humanity. And we quite a lot of us have even lost our loved ones, but that's okay. But like every cloud has a silver lining, I think COVID has done a digital push, I would say, especially in countries like Pakistan, basically. Globally, the technology companies were already using the internet and the platforms to work from home. Like we are aware, there are a lot of companies in USA, like Zapier work in 23 countries of the world, including USA, and don't have a physical office. Similarly, the Tata Consulting, 70% of the labor force were working from home. But, rest of the world, especially in this part of the region, South Asia, I think we were really standing on the edges and were very apprehensive to adopt this change. But I think what the COVID has done is that we will be forced to adopt this change, and that will become the new normal. I was reading the global big players like Twitter, Facebook, Siemens, even the State Bank of India. They have announced that they are going to allow the work from home as a permanent feature, even when the COVID goes away, even when the vaccination is done. So I feel this is high time for entire practices, and especially for the SMP, because SMP has to look inward and come up with I know it's challenging, but they have to come up with a hybrid plan, I think. I can share with you, like my firm, we have done two things. We've moved to the cloud, and I think everybody needs to do that, so that the office can be worked from different locations effectively. And number two is that we have approved Microsoft Teams as a collaborative app within the offices to chat, to work, to share files, and do the office work. So that's the new normal. I think everybody will have to adapt to that new normal. Thank you.
You are also a technical advisor on one of the committees of IFAC. I would like you to share with the participants the high points of the Practice Transformation Action Plan, a roadmap to future, issued by IFAC, which highlights key areas and initiatives for SMPs in the changing times.
Yeah, that's very important question, actually. But first, Sarah, before addressing that, I would like to tell the participants the amount of information, the wealth of information that is available on IFAC Gateway. And I will urge all the participants, whenever they have time, whenever they are facing any problem regarding the profession, they want to research something, they do go to the IFAC Gateway. I can tell you that I've been associated with this organization for the last 9 years. And still today, if I want to search on something, I'm amazed about the quality and the quantity of the data that is available. So please do
I'm
that.
sure your information will be very helpful to the participants.
Yeah, I have also shared a presentation which you have agreed to
Yes.
mail it to
Share it with the
everybody.
participants. Yes.
Yeah,
after
and
that.
they have very important links also there, and there are also videos available from the accounting leadership throughout the world, and you can hear their insight and their views about the future to come. Just briefly sharing, because I understand we have a paucity of time here, the roadmap to the future for the practicing firms, especially the S&P. I think there are four key points basically. Number one is embrace the change. So change is the new constant, you know. When I was going through it, I remembered Allama Iqbal, great visionary. आज से 100 साल पहले उन्होंने कहा था सबात तगय्युर को है फकत ज़माने में. Sabat means constant and taghayyur means change. So he predicted. So the change is the new constant. So the future requires a very agile mind and a very open mind, which is willing to accept change and constantly focus on making improvement basically. And the key ability which you will require would be to anticipate the trends. That's very important. You anticipate the trends and then also anticipate the implication of those trends for your clients, so that you can then customize your services according to those trends. That's the key. And then also only those firms will be successful which stay ahead of curve. So that is number one, embrace the change. Then comes, which will be overemphasized, but very important, leverage technology. Fundamental to all future successful firm will depend on how they embrace the technology for increasing productivity, for increasing the efficiency, or for increasing the value addition to their client. And you know, this we can do under 4 heads in technology. Number one is that you conduct an environmental scan. And when I say environmental scan, I don't mean to say that you look inward, you look outward. What is available in the world? What is happening in the world? And how it's going to affect you, how it's going to impact you. And you think, when you think about the concern of positioning your firm in the future, you will be surprised that most of the concerns underpins the technology at the base. So you have to be, your thinking has to be clear. And once you do that thinking, then you need to, thinking is not good enough, then you need to have an implementation plan. And then you have to see what is relevant to you. You have to see what are the budgets with you. And then you have to prioritize them basically. So that is the second part. And once you do that, then the third and very significant thing is to identify a technology champion within the organization. That's very important, because most of the people within the organizations are like we partners are busy in day-to-day mundane thing, and we do not find time to focus on this area. Like we have identified a partner and we have identified him as a technology champion, and we have given him the responsibility to do that. So all the firms need to actually identify that person.
Like previously we used to have governance champions, now we have to have champions.
Absolutely right. So fourth thing, very importantly, adopt the cloud. There is no way you can do without a cloud. Cloud will help you to remotely, all your employees to remotely access your businesses, basically, your office resources. Cloud will help you to share your work instantly with your clients also. Cloud will help you to reduce your cost also. You don't need, I am a small firm, I cannot have a technology expert in my firm. That cybersecurity, it will take care of that. And lastly on technology is involve your clients into it. Share them what you're doing and how you're going to better service them. And the third thing, which also Banu talked about, third point is the human talent. She's absolutely right. Diversity is very important. You need to have now data scientists, like she said. She's absolutely right. So diversity of the team is very important. You need to bring in different competencies. Accountants alone will not do. Number two is that the flexibility of hours and working from home, so that you allow how you can retain the talent. If a female talent is available in the market, and she has to choose between the family and the work, I can allow her the flexibility of hours through working remotely, which will help them to retain that talent. And then the last thing is that also other competencies, like we emphasize a lot from the forum of the institute, also the soft skill, the interaction skill, the negotiation skills, They're also very important as far as the talent management is concerned. And last thing is that the firms have to evolve their operating model. And we have to get away from the routine traditional roles of taxation, auditing, and evolve more advisory roles basically. And S&P has a big advantage because they are the trusted advisor to their clients. So what they can do is they can actually work with their clients. And to share, and before closing this, let me share with you, I received a call 2-3 days before from one prospective client. And I asked him, what service do you need? Do you need tax, auditing, or advisory? And you know what the answer came? He said, we don't need neither of the three. I said, then what do you need? He said, we would like you to support us in making our business profitable. And that was a music to my ear. I said, well, we don't do it, but definitely we can do it. You come over. And so, you have to really change your perspective totally, basically. And unless and until S&P do that, it's going to be very difficult to survive in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Naeem. That was really enlightening, your talk. Shamila, a very warm welcome to you. Different countries have dealt with this changing situation differently. You have been hearing speakers from UK and Pakistan by now. And you being from Sri Lanka and you are working for a business process industry, would you share with us how the business process industry handled the challenges under COVID? What challenges are impacting the dynamics of this business in terms of providing outsourcing services to clients? Can the practices adopted by your industry be applied to other service industries like consultants, advisory, tax, audit, etc.?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on this session. It's a great pleasure to be part of this discussion. So to give a bit of an understanding onto our industry is actually not necessarily having the companies within the landmarks of the Sri Lanka itself or particular country itself. We work for different countries. We work from east to west to south to north. So it's all around, and our clients are worldwide clients. So one of the way that we were really impacted, because we were basically working through the technology, and there is huge amount of information security, data security requirement in our industry. And just to give simple examples, the requirement of InfoSec requirement in the industry, you can't even allow a staff of your team to take a mobile phone inside your office, because we restricted it to that extent where you don't allow somebody to capture the data even through a picture of a phone, because these are very vital information of a different client, and there is a confidentiality requirement. So you don't even give a chance of such, which we sometimes even don't think. So it's such a restricted data security environment which was in our industry. But having said that, when it comes to the pandemic, you didn't have a choice, because you still have to deliver the service, but you can't physically come to the office, be working in the office, and there was a compulsory requirement for you to move back and start working from office. So the biggest challenge for us was how do we maintain the InfoSec requirement, the data security requirement of our clients. And as Amir said, there was an attitude shift which brought the pandemic to all of us. I would say that also has brought in a change into the risk appetite of all of us, because even our clients understood that for us to provide the service, for them to continue on getting the service, you need to let go certain risks that you didn't want to absorb earlier. So they agreed to relax certain conditions to allow us to work from home, where we connected to their network through internet. However, this brought a different challenge to us because our cost on cybersecurity, unlike any other organization which is residing within the same country, our cybersecurity investment was very high because we still need to maintain the connectivity to the client with a secure environment, and also it has to be uninterrupted service. And also the other challenge that we have as an industry we face was our services are governed by service level agreement, we call it SLAs. So there is a way that our service is being measured by the supplier. So however much the challenges that we have, we still have to maintain those service level agreement in terms of our turnaround times and the quality. But there is a challenge because the connectivity at a home is not as effective as a connectivity you have in office, because these are personal service providers, home provided network, routers. So that connectivity was not that great. And also sometimes even the weather condition in the country, when it's heavy raining, thundering, you lose power connectivity, and you can't be expecting everybody to have alternative power supply like generators and so on. So there is a productivity effect came into the industry again because of these infrastructure challenges that we had. Another challenge I would like to highlight is that in terms of transitioning the work now, how we transition the work from a client is that we usually travel to the client destination, we work with the client's staff, we understand the process, we perform the task there, and we bring it back to our own locations and we start performing the task. But the pandemic has stopped us traveling onto different countries, be with different clients. So we had to get ourselves, the entire knowledge transfer was happening virtually, right?
Yeah,
and
yes.
how do you exactly capture the knowledge that client has through a virtual session? It wasn't easy, but I think fortunately, or the way that we manage the transition, I would say that has been much better, much productive than we physically been doing it because of the different technologies and tools that we have adopted. But that was one of the major challenge also that we faced. Some of the practices that we've used, I think we can discuss. I would like to discuss something on the productivity point of view later that I believe would help the other practitioners as well. Sarah.
Jamila, the new normal is causing anxiety, and the anxiety is known to decrease work performance and reduce job satisfaction. We rely on human psyche that when an employee comes to work and spends 8 hours, this means that he or she is doing work. How do you measure performance of employees of a service industry when employees are working from home?
Yeah, so it's a mindset change actually, because even when you are physically in office, what you tend to see is that you measure the clock time. You exactly. See the in time and you see the out time. But you can't, there is no assurance for you to say, within that period you actually work. But I do believe what pandemic has changed is that it has given us the flexibility to be trustworthy, to be more transparent, and to be more flexible in terms of capturing what the output is. That's what our industry has brought into the picture. So what we have done, I'll give my own examples in some of the process that I overlook. What we have done is initially we capture the time that individuals spend on different applications. So there are tools that we've used. When you log into your system, when you log into your client network, there is a tool that runs in the back of your client environment, which can capture how much of time you spent on MS Word, how much time you spent on MS Excel, and how much of time you have actually been on client system, whether it's a ERP or any other database. It captures the time that you've been on, and also it captures the time that you've been idle. So, you tend to see, because this data is being captured, and you'd be questioned, there is a governance around to, you have MI and you looked into this data, and you tend to see that your idle time is being measured. So this is how we initially started. However, later when we got into the settling down of a working from home situation, we did a time and motion study for different activities, and we arrived at the AHT, average handling time, for each of the activities. Then what we started was, we know a certain number of outputs that a particular individual needs to provide on a particular day, and we measure the AHT through our time and motion studies, and then we see the productivity of that individual based on the hours that person has worked, because we know for 100 productive items, this is the time that you need to spend, and have you done that output within the time that you've worked. So now we are trying to merge the two to ensure that we capture the data. And one good thing that has brought into the picture is that has given more transparency even to the individual to understand on certain areas they have to improve. They are spending a lot of time, and there is a training requirement. You need to get into certain training for you to improve your productivity, because you don't know, even if you take Excel, you don't know how to maximize the usage of Excel. So that has come into the picture, where we started identifying individual training needs, and also it has helped us to coach and counsel our individuals, because we understand working from home is not an easy task. You have a lot of pressure coming in, and your connectivity or engagement with the individual also has brought into the picture, which has helped us to increase our productivity, because people start realizing there is an investment coming through to me. There is a lot of engagement taking place. Because of that, we feel that there is an increased productivity as well. Hope I answered you, Zaira.
Thank you. It was very nice, especially this performance measurement was really, really very nice. Thank you. Majid sir, you are the CEO of Standard Chartered Bank. That's one of the leading banks, and you're representing the banking industry in our panel. You are well aware that the role of automation is shifting and the tasks people do. Across the board, employees are eager to see organizations put greater emphasis on flexibility, competitive compensation, and well-being of once the pandemic is over. How does one create value in these difficult pandemic times? If you can talk to us how your bank handled this, because we know that your bank has started some Now and Wow drive. What sort of technologies were adopted to make the business agile and lean? How trust disciplines were made, and how empathy was demonstrated through trust, through these three pillars you have named: connect, collaborate, and create?
No, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting me to this great session. And it's a great panelist, and everything has been phenomenal. So thank you for a great question. And I'll just kick off. To your point, Standard Chartered had been focusing on flexi hours before the pandemic. So going into pandemic, it was though a surprise, but the bank was well prepared. We reimagined our workplace because we realized now post this incident that work is not something yet you go to, it is something that you do. And based on that, we worked and leveraged new ways of working by including new technologies, the disruptive technologies. There was, as we're all aware, Zoom is an ideal example, where virtual interactions were increased and we had collaborative tools. BlueJeans is an example that we started using to interact with clients and our employees as well. So engagement was one of the things that we really emphasized on. We used to, have regular empathy check-in calls through these platforms. And that really ensured that the interaction with our clients and employees remains intact. During this process, we talked about governance. For us, governance was very critical from an information and cybersecurity perspective and data confidentiality. So we made sure that though we kept engaged and held on to these things, we did not compromise on data security as well. And I would like to compliment the central bank because the initiatives that they took to help the banking industry on a whole really helped. They introduced work from home policies. They helped us, even gave us approvals to ensure that our call centers are able to operate from home, which was unheard of prior to this. So they were very forthcoming and aggressive and supported the industry. And then, from an industry perspective, as we're all aware, that cash flows were being affected. So the various funding techniques that central bank came out with just, help supplement them as well. Another thing, we really, we need to really understand that during this period, corporates and banks especially need to focus on upskilling and reskilling. We need to unlearn and relearn because the corporate world or the operating environment has changed totally. And the reliance on disruptive technologies is going to increase radically. We all talked about, various, blockchain is an ideal example. I'll just share something interesting. We are recently in the process of leveraging blockchain to advise and issue a letter of credit, which was unheard of. The reason we're able to do this now is because we have to be creative and collaborate and connect. And that's what the 3 pillars Standard Chartered has come up with post-pandemic. We need to stay connected both with our clients and employees and leverage these technologies to ensure that we add value. I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I thank all the panelists, but I think we have a few questions for the panelists. And now over to Sadia. You have the questions.
Thank you.
Sadia? Okay.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Thank you so much to our respected panelists and our moderator. So the first question, which has been asked by Sabah Rashid, the question is that where the technology has been an equalizer from a gender perspective, how do we ensure that employers do not exploit this situation to maintain and widen the gender pay gap? I will request Ms. Bano to please answer this question.
I think it's a really good question, to be honest. So I guess from my perspective, this was something we've discussed at an International Women's Day event as well. So gender pay gap and making sure that that gap doesn't widen, the only way to make sure that happens is to make sure we have women in the workforce and the pandemic, and also people who have, during the pandemic, if the people have left, that the women are encouraged back into the workforce so that we continue to see talented women come through the cycle, get to the leadership. And remember one thing, the gender pay gap has to do with a lot of women not having leadership positions, right? So that's where the talent really needs to be focused around. We need more and more women getting to the, not just the workforce, but getting to the top. So that will help us. So again, that my 2 things that I will say is to make sure we can enlighten, enthuse, make sure we are focused on the women agenda, getting them back into the business, and then giving them no unconscious biasism because of a pandemic gap. If they have taken a maternity gap a year, if they've taken sabbatical, that you still make sure that you have these women welcome back into the workforce. So, the risk of widening the gender pay gap will only go if you have the talent coming through. So that's what I think is the right way.
Thank you, Banu. There is another question which I will request Mr. Majid to respond to. So the question is that due to remote work, I think that there are multiple health issues experienced by employees, mainly due to posture issues while working remotely. Is any such instance observed in Pakistan? And what type of cost-effective steps the employers may take to facilitate the employees at home, as mentioned by Ms. Banu? So this question has been asked by Kaleem Aslam. Over to you, Majid.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great question. And, I'll speak for about Standard Chartered. What we've done is we've launched a wellness app during COVID. And what we've done is we've even gone to the extent of hiring specialist psychiatrists who could work in confidentiality with our colleagues and their families. So, and the wellness app has provided opportunity for employees and, to go onto the app and seek help. So posture issues were there. We even went to the extent of providing basic services or amenities to our employees so that they could be comfortable in their home. And a set was given to every employee so that they are not suffering these issues. So that's what we did. And I'm sure the other industries also followed suit. So that's because we all understand that right now the key asset is our employee. And we need to create a culture where they feel comfortable and they're able to bring the creativity and improve the ability to deliver for our organizations.
Thank you, Sadia.
The next question is also from Kaleem Aslam. I would like Mr. Naeem Akhtar Sheikh to answer this question. The question is, the new ways of working, as mentioned by Mr. Naeem Akhtar, also increase the use of technologies like clouds, Teams, and the use of data security services by companies offering services to their clients. So how you see the profession of audit in future? Does companies still invest for audit of their companies after incorporating effective audit automated controls? And what skills or certification an auditor should achieve in order to cope with future demands of the market?
Thank you, Sadia. I think very important and relevant question. You see, World Economic Forum last year, there was a report coming up which said that in year 2022, employees would need to devote 101 days in a year upskilling and retraining in the new skills. 101 days. You just look at that, we have about 250 or working days in a year. So about 60% of the time will go. That's the prediction of the World Economic Forum. So there is no confusion about it that we need to continuously update and upskill our knowledge, number one. Number two, like I said, we need to diversify our team. It will no more be possible for just an accountant to undertake an audit. We need to bring in more people from a diversified backgrounds to undertake these audits, basically. So, and we need to invest that. Yes, I agree that the entire ecosystem has to improve. It's not just the audit firms; it's also their clients which need to adapt to that changes in the scenario in the arena. And that's why I said that the chartered accountant firms need to work with their clients also. Basically, that engagement is also very important. That they work as a stakeholder with the organization and within themselves to bring in this change.
Thank you, Mr. Naeem Akhtar Sheikh. There is another question. In interest of time, we will only take one other question. This is from Jawad Khan, and he's asking that how customer data was secured while call center agents were working from home. I will request Mr. Majid to please respond to this question.
See, customer confidentiality is a key paramount thing at Standard Chartered and all the financial industry. We have robust systems to ensure the confidentiality of the data for our clients is maintained at all times. We had proper, the backend was made so robust that the quality of data and the secrecy of the data is maintained regularly. we had the processes running there continuously to ensure that the data is kept the secret and there are no pilferages. We have, there is in Singapore, I can't really, share the details, but just we have a hub where around the clock, we have monitoring to ensure that the secrecy and the confidentiality of data is maintained. And the entire process was ran through State Bank, and based on that, they were kind enough to support and ensure that we were able to provide that comfort to our clients and to our call center people, because the safety of our colleagues was paramount.
Okay. Sadia, Sadia, thank you.
Yes, I think Banu wanted to add. Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Majid. So Banu wanted to add something. Banu, please, over to you.
Yeah, so I guess two things I will say. Now, coming back to the point of cybersecurity. So the number of, there's obviously due to the pandemic, the heightened risk of cyber attacks has been there. So you have more attacks, but it's become much more sophisticated as well. So that's one thing I would like to say to everybody, that cyber risk was heightened, but the sophistication of these attacks are wonderful to note. So it's become much more sophisticated and it goes unattended. So that's one thing that we've been discussing a lot internally and externally with clients. One thing on the mental well-being and the health issues related, there's one, what I would say is within the firm as well, and elsewhere at clients I've seen, there have been a lot of efforts being put specifically for women at the workforce. So for us, what we did is we also offered women childcare at home and elsewhere. What can we do to support them so that they could continue to perform their work? We also gave them a specific code where they could put their charge hours of how much time they're spending on health, taking care of their schoolings and the kids. So that way we could analyze the data, how much responsibility a woman had. So, that was the most beautiful, I think one of the best things that we could do, because it helped us understand the problems that women are facing in parenting and working from home. And it was not just for childcare, it was also for elderly support, looking after the well-being and anything else. So I think these kind of tactical steps needs to be taken to support the women back into work. And that's a very big thing we need to really focus on. Please do not think that this is going to go away so quickly, and if it doesn't go away, this pandemic and the working from home and the responsibility on women, and we don't do the right things, which is managing and understanding what they're going through, you will never be able to entertain them back into the workforce or keep them going towards leadership. So I think that was one thing I really wanted to say to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Banu. In interest of the time, we will not be taking any further questions from our audience. All the questions which have been asked are there in the chat box, and you can also email your questions to ICAP and we will respond back after the session. Thank you to all our panelists and our moderator. The panel discussion was surely thought-provoking. Ladies and gentlemen, the poll results are now available with us. I will request IT to please display the results on our screens. So there were two questions which were asked. The first one was, do you think work from home boosted productivity? 50% of the participants said that yes. And so there is like a 50-50. And then for question number 2, is there adequate employer support? So 59% of the participants responded that there is an adequate support available. So they responded it as yes. Khushreed Kotwal, doing the concluding remarks, will share more insights and analysis about these results in her speech. Ladies and gentlemen, technology is the backbone of any working model. To discuss about the readiness of Pakistan's technology to embrace new ways of working, we have with us Mr. Nadeem Hussain. Mr. Nadeem Hussain, who is the special guest speaker. He is the founder, CEO, and president of Tameer Microfinance, Pakistan's first private sector microfinance bank. He was invited to speak at Harvard University and Johns Hopkins University in 2012, where Tameer Bank was showcased as Asia's solution to financial empowerment. He was awarded the Global Leader Award in 2011 by C5 in Geneva. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Nadeem Hussain. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be talking to this august company. I have 10 minutes, so I'll try and encapsulate my thoughts during this period. The first thing is that COVID has dragged Pakistan into the technological age. Prior to COVID, the only digital transactions we were largely viewing were those on the payment basis, and even those were partially over the counter. As a consequence of COVID coming in, at least 5 sectors have seen major change in terms of volume appreciation in transaction value. The first one, as we are aware of, are digital payments. Digital payments have increased at least 20-fold before the pre-COVID era. Now, part of that may be because the State Bank has removed the interbank funds transfer fee, and as a consequence, people are using this for free transfers. But even if we assume the fee was to come back, we would be able to see a significant increase because the acceptance of using digital payments, especially for utility bill payments, purchases, and e-commerce is increasing. In fact, e-commerce is now growing at the rate of $1 billion a year in Pakistan. The market is probably between $10 and $15 billion. So we're still scratching only the surface. But COVID has had positive impetus for a few other industries as well. One of them is health tech. Previously, health tech was only marginal, but now online pharmacies, online doctor consultations, online doctor appointments, finding my doctors are all becoming pretty much relatively normal compared to before. There are at least 20 companies in the market, and one company has just raised another $5 million. So the startups which started pre-COVID in the health tech sector are now finding traction. Similar experience is being viewed in the education sector. Previously, again, education tech was a marginal thing only available for tuitions or potential courses. But with the closure of schools, the schools had to rapidly move to a tech-based solution so that their students could actually do their homework and participate in class sessions using digital means. Though health tech and health tech have seen major growth. In addition to this, as I mentioned earlier, e-commerce, we're seeing a lot more action in the last mile delivery. So companies like Tajir, Bazaar, Retailer are now available, and they're providing digital railroads to merchants to be able to access information and make payments directly to FMCGs rather than using distribution. So other than the lending piece, because as a result of unemployment, the lending piece meant that the default rates at microfinance banks, commercial banks, and non-bank financial institutions have increased significantly, while the State Bank made central interventions to help defray the losses. Once those facilities mature, we will see a major uptick in default rates before the market settles down. From a technology perspective, I would say in some cases we are ahead than many countries in the world, and in some cases we're still in the dark ages. What we have from a positive perspective are some infrastructures. For example, we have NADRA. NADRA provides a unique identifier to every citizen of Pakistan who is applied. That provides the basic of a digital identity. When you're talking about digital transactions, digital identity is a key. And so we are one of the few countries where you can get real-time biometric verification of an individual through NADRA. And now we're seeing more and more companies outside the financial sector starting to use NADRA. We also have another infrastructure company called PMD, Pakistan Mobility Database, where you can actually put into sync the number of an individual and the CNIC so that you can have a second level of security. The reason I'm mentioning this, whoever wants to go into digital strategy or using digital railroads, they need to first identify the customer. And these two elements purely greatly help assist creating digital identities so fraud or fraudulent transactions can be minimized. Other than that, we have 55 million smartphone users and about another 50 million on feature phones. Every month, we're seeing an increase and a transfer from feature phone users to smartphone users. Smartphone users, once they have a smartphone, obviously make the digital railroads and digital interaction much easier. GSM covers probably close to 90% of Pakistan's physical infrastructure. So as far as reach is concerned, we have at least 2G services available in 90% of Pakistan. 5G is still a little bit off, ways off, although there have been some talks of spectrum sales. So first we'll have to convert the 2G directly into 4G, and then obviously 5G will come down later on. So what we are seeing is a plethora of, other than the health tech and e-tech, education tech I talked about, we're seeing a major uptick also in infotainment, e-gaming, agri-tech, and now people are focusing on the Kriana ecosystem, whereby QR codes are coming in, which are quick response code, so that you can actually make a physical payment, digital payment for physical goods. The reason I talk about, again, I'm giving more examples in the financial sector, is that we have close to 6 trillion rupees out in the market, in the system right now. We're one of the few countries which has such a very high number of cash in circulation. If you want to go digital, you need to convert this cash into the digital system and then keep it digital rather than going out again as cash. And that's something that we're currently struggling with, because while we have about 55 million wallets, less than 10% of those are active. There are 4 technologies currently which are dominating in the world, and we seem to be very far behind in all 4 of these technologies. The first technology is the use of big data and AI. There are less than 5 companies which are actually using AI as a tool to change the customer journey. The lens I always have is that of the customer journey. Let me give you an example. Currently, there are companies in the system which ask you to give access with your consent to your smartphone data, and based on their algorithm, just using that data can give an instant loan of up to even, let's say, 5,000 rupees for a month. Now, why is that important? 5,000 rupees may seem like a small amount, but this is an instant loan given with money in your hand under 5 minutes, which will allow you to establish credit history, and subsequently you can go to a commercial bank and get a much higher ticket size loan. Our banking industry, unfortunately, remains mired in the dark ages. If you were to ask for a credit card or a personal loan and you are new to the industry, you would be lucky if you got something under 2 months. If you want to open a bank account, again, other one, it's a level 0 remote bank account, which has limitations as to what your transactions on a month can be. You are going to be lucky if you're able to open a bank account under a month. In this world now, where bank accounts can be opened in a minute, our banks remain in the dark ages as far as account opening is concerned or potential lending is concerned. In fact, the total lending commercial banks have to individuals in a country of 220 million people is less than 1.5 million individuals. So big data and AI have not been used by the banks, which are sitting on a wealth of information, because in your banking account, you have multiple transactions. You have credit card settlements, you have bank transfers, you have deposits. Those create a customer profile and customer behavior, which banks are using worldwide to create a lending product for their deposit customers. 55 million bank accounts, 1.5 million lending customers. If big data AI was used, you would change the customer journey and make instant credit available to new to industry customers, which we still haven't been able to do. The other technology other than these 2, big data and AI, which the world is adopting, but we haven't used except for very limited use cases, is blockchain. And please don't confuse blockchain with Bitcoin. Bitcoin uses blockchain, but that is just one application of blockchain. Blockchain, not just for the sake of blockchain, but has multiple uses in Pakistan. For example, in the pharma industry, if we were to do it correctly, every medicine produced through its value chain, through blockchain, could be ascertained whether this is a placebo or an actual medicine. But that requires the pharma industry to embrace the concept of blockchain. Similarly, 10% or more of our degrees that students provide are fraudulent. If again, blockchain was used at the original source and that degree put on blockchain, so when I, as an employee, go to a potential employer, I could give my blockchain public hash key and the confirmation would be instant rather than wait 1 month or 2 months if your degree is from out of town. The process is so convoluted that there are companies which have been created for a large employer which has invested in an individual only to find 3 months down the road that that potential degree is fraudulent. So blockchain can also be used for trade, blockchain can be used for account opening. But I caution you that blockchain, just for the sake of blockchain, is of no use. It has to create and provide a specific value, and then blockchain becomes popular. The last technology, which again the world is embracing and where we are far behind, is cloud computing. Recently, the State Bank has come up with some regulation which allows people to actually park some of the information that they have outside meaning outside Pakistan, because customer data to a large extent is very private. The State Bank is very concerned, but you can anonymize that data and keep it outside. The reason I'm talking about cloud computing is that it's 1/10 or even sometimes 1/50th the cost of you creating your own primary data center. And the SME, which is one of the largest contributors of GDP in Pakistan, are people who can't afford necessarily their own primary data center. So cloud computing can be a huge force multiplier for them. So the point I'm making is that Pakistan is at the cusp where it can embrace technology. Some infrastructure stuff we have good regulators, but unfortunately, we have not been able to get to the stage where we can properly embrace the 4 technologies I talked about. But we are seeing huge traction in the segments I talked about: fintech, health tech, edtech, infotainment, Kriana ecosystem, and agri-tech. And if we actually keep focusing on them, we can see a much larger number of people using this. So that's my initial 10 minutes, people. If I have time, and if the organizers want, I can respond to some Q&As. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nadeem Hussain. So basically this, thank you for your proposal of asking few questions, but we are in terms of short in time. So I will just so I'll just move to the next speaking slot. So basically this brings us to the concluding remarks of Ms. Khurshid Kotwal. Ms. Khurshid is an independent director on board of Pakistan Microfinance Network. She is the CEO and founder of Asman International, a consultancy firm. Qualified as chartered accountant in 1991 and joined Unilever where she served for 18 years. Her last position at Unilever was in capacity of corporate finance director. Ms. Khurshid Kotwal, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sadia. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, because we have a wide audience from USA, UK, Canada, Australia, Kuwait, Oman, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Saudi Arabia, and we are delighted and welcome to all of you for joining in. We have about 400 participants either on Facebook or logged in. So thank you very much. And I think this topic is very important and for every one of us, because the new normal is slowly going to return. And therefore it is important to talk about it, share some best practices as to what's happening around the world. And that is why we got hold of some industry leaders at the local front, at the international level, to come and share their views of what's happening. Under Hina's leadership, this important topic, we have been able to set up this webinar in a very short time. Now, our lives are changing a lot. I mean, everything, there are new ways of working, Businesses are moving from an uncertainty phase to a stable phase now. COVID outbreak is like a black swan in our history. It's led to the death of a number of people, disruption in business, a lot of losses to the business, and unemployment. But history also teaches us that when these sort of uncertainties happen, there's a silver lining or there are opportunities. I mean, if you look at in 2003, when the SARS outbreak happened, it created momentum for companies like JD.com and Alibaba. So there is everything. When there is crisis, there is an opportunity. And of course, the biggest challenge is that there's dash for cash. I mean, I remember in 1998, when I was in Unilever and as treasurer, I was handling all the cash and banking matters. Whoever had the pile of cash or was able to pay their debts or take on open letters of credit and bring in their materials quickly were really the winners in the marketplace. And even today, what we see is that when that cash gets short under business uncertainties. So this is an important thing to remember as well. And of course, we've heard today as well as we know that State Bank has helped a lot as well in terms of making policies and rules in terms of the repayments, etc. So, and the hybrid model of working from home as well as from work will continue. I think this is what it will happen in the future as well. And people are of the view that yes, where there are benefits, of course, you miss out on the interaction of people. And as Amir said, the energy and the human element is missed out when you're working from home. And therefore, this hybrid model is likely to continue. So, I mean, we've seen in the papers that PwC UK has already announced a sort of a hybrid model for its teams, where people will be have flexibility to work from home for a certain portion of their time. So I think businesses will come up with these sort of hybrid models. Of course, there would be those extreme cases as well, like the Goldman Sachs chairman mentioned that he felt the interaction was very important, and to him, his team and his people will be back to work. So different views are emerging, and but clearly there are benefits and advantages of having a hybrid model. Another important thing which is likely to happen or is happening actually is the pool of talent that is available. So because of COVID, there have been a lot of job losses, and now talent, a lot of companies are sitting on talent. So what is likely to happen is that there will be a sharing of talent. So for example, I was again reading about Unilever in the UK is doing a pilot project of seeing how resources can be shared, of course not with competitors, but with their peers. So these are some of the trends that could be emerging. Now, digital technology is going to be top priority. I mean, it's gained a lot of momentum. Today, you've heard every speaker or most speakers talk about it. You've heard Nadeem speak about the fact that, yes, where we have the advantage of a digital identity, there's still a lot that can be done in terms of big data, in terms of artificial intelligence. And I fully agree, because, we felt the same about 4 years ago when CA Women's Committee held a conference on the fourth industrial revolution, which was all about these technologies and making people aware as to, how the world is changing and likely to change. So fully agreed that, IoT, 3D printing are all, going to happen, and Pakistan also needs some catching up. And I believe a lot of catching up is also required in RPA, which is like robotic processing automation. So, which is like using AI and intelligence. Like, so businesses in the West have already started using RPAs. And I think I did hear Majid talk about a bit on the RPAs, but generally RPAs is something that will eliminate a lot of jobs. Like the thing is not to be too concerned about these. This is a fact that AIs will climb up, or technologies will climb up the corporate ladder. Like, for example, when I went to the US, like 4 or 5 years ago, I had my first encounter with a bot, and it did more of servicing us at a hotel and bringing us all our requirements in the room. But now I think things have changed since then, and they are doing intelligent work of people. So a lot of RPA work will be done, and what Pakistan and what we need to do is not fear about these technologies. I think I continuously hear this, that will the technology take over the jobs? The answer is yes and no. Why? Because the technologies will take on some of the jobs, but what we need to do is that who will write these algorithms? I mean, it will be the humans who will be setting the parameters for these bots or these artificial intelligence to highlight. Who's going to communicate the decision to the employees? Again, it's all human beings that will be doing it. Yes, some of the jobs will be eliminated, but what we as individuals need to do is upskilling ourselves. Yes, jobs will go, but new jobs will be created. Jobs like data analysis will be in great demand. I mean, we've heard Nadeem as saying that, big data is important, and Pakistan still needs to go ahead with it. But these are the things that will happen in the future. And work from home needs a new set of softer skills as well, because you need to organize a home as well as work from home. And on the lighter side, men will stay at home as well and probably help women with the chores. So probably this will create an opportunity for women to and some space for them to work. But clearly, yes, there are opportunities for women, because these technologies help in terms of working from remote locations. I think in many areas, we will not be going back on things where convenience is concerned. For example, the online groceries or the home deliveries by even these tiny shopkeepers is something, is a luxury which we will tend to continue in the future as well. So the vaccines are, now everybody is going to be vaccinated, and slowly the new normal is returning. And with that, I'll end this webinar with a big thank you to all of you. And thank you very much to all the speakers who've taken out the time, who've come in from different zones to speak at our event. Many thanks to Hina, Saira, Sadia, Nazia, Zarmeen, and our IT team. I think without your help, this event would not have been possible. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's leave the meeting.